The silence of space was broken only by the steady hum of Eli Ward's small freighter, the Longstep. He was a lone mechanic and part-time scavenger, moving through abandoned zones near the edge of human-controlled space. His ship was old, patched, together with parts from a dozen different models, but it was reliable. It kept him alive. Eli wasn't looking for trouble. He was just scanning the area for scrap or signals when his dashboard lit up with a faint distress call. It was weak, repeating every 2 minutes, and not in any human language. He adjusted his sensors, boosting the signal. A strange pattern flickered across his screen, definitely alien, but not from any hostile species he knew. The signal came from a derelict ship floating slowly through space, covered in burn marks and drifting without power. Its design was unfamiliar, smooth curves, almost. Organic in shape, Eli hesitated. This could be dangerous. Pirates sometimes used fake signals to lure ships, but something about the message felt genuine. It repeated again, a soft voice crackling through translation static. "Please. Help." He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "All right, Longstep, let's see what's going on." Eli docked carefully and entered the alien vessel with a portable oxygen supply and scanner. The inside was dark and quiet. Lights flickered here and there. There were no bodies, but signs of struggle. Burn marks on walls, shattered equipment, and scattered personal belongings. As he turned a corner, his scanner beeped. Life form detected. He followed the signal to a small chamber at the back of the ship. Inside was a single figure, a woman or something close to it. Her skin was a pale shade of blue-gray, almost like moonlight. Her hair hung in tangled strands, and she was wrapped in torn fabric that had once been a uniform. Eli stood frozen at the entrance of the small room, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of the alien woman. She was sitting on the floor, her back pressed against the cold metal wall. Her body was covered in grime, with dirt and ash caked into the skin. Her breathing was shallow and her eyes were closed, as though she had given up all hope. For a moment, Eli didn't know what to do. He had encountered aliens before, but never in a situation like this. This one was different, fragile, alone, and clearly in need of help. The thought of leaving her behind didn't sit right with him. He knew that if he didn't help her, she might not survive much longer. Stepping cautiously toward her, Eli cleared his throat. "Hey, are you okay?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing a pale, shimmering gaze. She looked up at him, confusion and fear swirling in her eyes. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She reached out weakly with one hand, and her fingers trembled as they hovered over her chest, where the translation device lay half buried under a layer of grime. Eli crouched down beside her, gently pulling the translator device free from the dirt. He wiped it off and pressed the button. It hummed to life with a soft beep, and after a few moments the alien woman's voice crackled through the device. "Please. Help me wash, human." Her words were slow, broken, but clear enough to understand. Eli's eyebrows shot up in surprise. She wanted to clean up, of all things. He had expected some sort of distress call or request for food or medical attention, not this. "All right," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "I'll help you." He stood and looked around the small room. There was no water here, no way to properly clean her, but the Longstep had a med bay, and that's where he could give her some real help. He held out his hand. "Come on, I'll take you to my ship. It's safe there. We'll get you cleaned up." The woman's eyes flickered with something like relief, but her weak state made it hard for her to move. Eli carefully helped her to her feet, steadying her as she wobbled a bit. He wrapped one arm around her waist and slowly guided her out of the room, through the corridors of the derelict ship, and back to the airlock. The moment they stepped into the Longstep, the air felt different, fresher, cleaner. The ship's systems hummed around them as Eli guided her to the med bay. It wasn't much, just a small room with basic medical equipment, but it would have to do. He gently helped her onto a reclining chair and began preparing a wash station. The room was sterile, lit by soft overhead lights. A gentle hum filled the air as Eli set up the basic cleansing devices in the corner. He took a moment to study her as she settled into the chair, trying to make her comfortable. Her skin, despite being dirty and worn, had a smooth, soft texture to it. It shimmered faintly in the light, like moonlight reflecting off the water. Her features were delicate, with high cheekbones and large, expressive eyes. Eli couldn't help but notice how fragile she seemed, like she had been through so much, and yet was still holding on. He spoke as he worked, trying to keep the atmosphere calm. "I'm Eli. I'll get you cleaned up, and then we'll figure out what to do next." The woman nodded weakly, her lips curling slightly in a tired smile. She looked at him with an expression of gratitude, but still her eyes seemed clouded with sorrow. The ordeal she had gone through was clear, even if she hadn't spoken much about it yet. Eli activated the wash system, and water flowed gently from the ceiling, soft and steady. The alien woman winced at first as the water touched her skin, but soon she relaxed, letting the warmth of it seep into her muscles. Eli watched from a distance, not wanting to intrude, but still unable to look away. There was something about her, something that made him feel an unusual connection. As she washed, Eli quietly worked on cleaning up the room, arranging the supplies and making sure the medbay was stocked. He kept his distance, though his thoughts were never far from her. He had no idea what she was going through, but he knew that helping her was the right thing to do. After a while, the woman finished washing and sat back in the chair, looking more at ease. Her eyes met Eli's, and there was a glimmer of something in them, a spark of life, of hope. "Thank you," she said softly, the translation device making her words sound clear. "I am sorry, from the Azurian people." Eli smiled, glad to hear her speak more freely. "No problem, sorry. I'm just glad I could help." She gave a weak nod, then asked, "Where am I? What will happen now?" Eli hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. "You're safe now, on my ship. I'll make sure you get to somewhere where you'll be taken care of. But first, let's figure out who did this to you." Sari's eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "They took everything from us, but I'm not giving up." Eli nodded, impressed by her strength. "We'll figure it out, together." The two of them sat in silence for a moment, the quiet hum of the ship surrounding them. It wasn't much, but for now, it was enough. After Sari had recovered enough to walk without support, Eli made arrangements to get her settled aboard his ship. She seemed more at ease now that the worst of her exhaustion had passed, though the sadness still lingered in her eyes. Eli made sure she had everything she needed: food, water, and a comfortable place to rest. He also introduced her to the ship's small but functional systems, and to his surprise, Sari was quick to learn. "Human technology is fascinating," Sari remarked one afternoon, as she carefully examined a small device that controlled the ship's navigation. She had a gentle, thoughtful manner as she touched the controls, her fingers moving with grace, despite the rough state she had been in earlier. "Yeah, it's not much, but it gets me where I need to go," Eli replied, smiling. He had never met an alien so eager to understand the small details of everyday life. Most would be overwhelmed by the complexities of human technology, but Sari seemed to be soaking it all in. She smiled back, her soft voice a little steadier. "I never thought I would be on a ship like this. I thought the next journey I took would be among my people, not—" Her voice trailed off as though the weight of what had happened was too much to say aloud. Eli noticed the sorrow behind her words and quickly changed the subject. "Well, you're on the long step now, and for now, it's a safe place." Sari nodded, but the unease never completely left her eyes. Eli knew there was more to her story than she was letting on. But he wasn't going to push her to share everything until she was ready. He respected her space. In the following days, Sari began to spend more time learning about Earth and human culture. She was especially fascinated by the history of human exploration. She wanted to know everything about their journeys beyond Earth and the challenges they had faced. Eli spent hours talking about the first moon landing, the space stations in orbit, and the many expeditions that followed. He found himself surprised by her curiosity and intelligence. Despite the language barrier, they were able to communicate easily enough, and each day she seemed to grow stronger, both physically and emotionally. One day, while Eli was working on the ship's engine, he noticed Sari standing at the observation window, staring out into the endless expanse of space. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked over to her, curious about what she was looking at. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sari said softly, her voice full of wonder. Eli followed her gaze. The stars stretched out before them, countless and brilliant like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The sight never failed to amaze him, even though he had seen it 1,000 times. "Yeah, it is," he agreed, standing beside her. "You get used to it, but it still has that magic." Sari turned to him, her face serious now. "Back on my ship, there was a moment when I thought I would never see the stars again. I thought I was forgotten." Eli's heart tightened at the sadness in her voice. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words felt inadequate. "You're not forgotten. You're here, and I'm going to make sure you get to where you need to go." Sari looked at him, her expression softening. "Thank you. I don't know how I can repay you for what you've done. My people." She paused, as if the weight of her people's loss was too much to bear. "They need help, and I don't know how to give it to them." Eli rested a hand on her shoulder. "One step at a time. First, we figure out where to go next." Her gaze lingered on him, her eyes filled with both gratitude and something more. Trust. Yes, one step at a time. Over the next few days, Eli and Sari worked together to figure out a plan. Eli used his old contacts in the Human Exploration Network to try and gather information about the Azurian people. What he learned wasn't encouraging. Their home planet had been attacked by space pirates, leaving their species scattered and vulnerable. The pirates had been targeting weaker civilizations, and Sari was one of the few survivors. Eli knew the situation wasn't simple, but he was determined to help her. They needed to find other survivors, other ships that might have escaped the attack, and, most importantly, they needed to get the Azurian people the help they deserved. But the road ahead was uncertain. The space around them was vast and dangerous, full of unknowns. Sari was still adjusting to human life, and the weight of her loss weighed heavily on her. Eli didn't blame her for that. She had lost everything, and yet here she was, still fighting. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he did know one thing. For as long as Sari needed him, he would do whatever it took to help her. The days turned into weeks, and slowly the connection between Eli and Sari grew. They worked together as a team, their bond built on mutual respect and the unspoken promise that neither of them was alone in this vast, empty space. Despite the challenges, there was a quiet understanding between them, a feeling that no matter how hard the journey ahead might be, they would face it together. And for the first time in a long while, Eli found himself looking forward to the future, no longer as a solitary traveler, but as someone with a purpose beyond himself. Days passed, as Eli and Sari continued their work aboard the Longstep. The ship, though small and patched together, had become a place of safety for both of them. As the hours stretched on, their routines grew more comfortable, but Eli could sense that Sari was still carrying a heavy burden. One evening, as they sat at the table eating a simple meal, Sari grew quiet, staring out the window into the vast emptiness of space. Eli didn't push her to speak, but he could feel her anxiety in the air. "We're getting closer, Eli," Sari said suddenly, her voice low, almost as if she were speaking to herself. Closer to where they are. Eli looked at her, his brow furrowing. Who? The pirates, Sari said, her eyes hardening. The ones who attacked us. I've been listening, watching. I can feel them out here, like shadows, always waiting. Eli paused. He knew about the pirates, of course. They had targeted Sari's people and had made life difficult for many species in the region. What he didn't know was how close they were to being caught in their web. Are you sure? He asked, his voice steady. It could be nothing. Sari shook her head, her face grim. No, they're out there, and I know they're looking for more survivors. They won't stop until they've found them all. Eli's fingers tightened around his glass. He didn't want to imagine what would happen if they ran into the pirates. He'd heard stories, but never seen the pirates firsthand. He knew they were ruthless, and their raids had left entire systems in ruin. But Sari's certainty made him uneasy. He couldn't ignore it. All right, he said, setting his glass down. We'll need to be careful. But for now, let's stay on course. We'll keep searching for survivors, and if we come across them, we'll do what we can. Sari nodded, but the tension in her posture didn't relax. She had seen too much, lost too much, and the weight of it all was now pressing down on her, more than ever. The next day, they were busy scanning the region for any signs of life. Eli had worked the Longstep systems to their limit, and while it wasn't the most advanced ship out there, it was quick and stealthy. Two things that might come in handy if they needed to avoid detection. Anything yet? Eli asked, glancing at the control panel as Sari operated the scanners. She frowned. Nothing, just empty space. Eli frowned too. Empty space was exactly what they didn't want to find. The silence was both comforting and ominous. They couldn't afford to waste time, but there was no way of knowing whether they were getting closer to finding the survivors or if they were just drifting farther away from hope. After a long silence, Sari sat back in her seat, letting out a breath. I'm sorry, Eli. I didn't mean to make you worry. Eli turned to face her. It's all right, Sari. You don't have to apologize. She looked at him, her eyes softening. I feel like I'm dragging you into a fight that isn't mine. To fight anymore. My people. I thought I could help them, but now I'm just a stranger in this vast space looking for something I can't find. Eli shook his head. Don't say that. You're not a stranger. You're just someone who's been through something terrible, and now you're trying to make things right. That's not easy, but it's worth it. Sari was quiet for a moment. Then she gave him a small smile. You've been kind to me. I don't know how to repay you. Eli didn't have an answer for that. What could he say? He wasn't looking for a reward. He was just doing what felt right. After all, they were both survivors in their own way. Sari had lost everything, and so had he, in a way. He'd spent too many years alone, drifting from job to job, never finding a real place to call home. But with Sari, there was a connection, something he hadn't expected. Suddenly, the ship's systems beeped. Eli jumped, looking back at the control panel. Did you hear that? Sari asked, her voice tense. Eli leaned forward, his heart racing. Yeah, that's a signal. He quickly worked the controls, tuning the ship's systems to pick up the signal more clearly. It was faint, a series of broken patterns that resembled an emergency distress call, but it wasn't a human signal. This one was something else, entirely. The language wasn't familiar to him, but it was clear enough that it had to be from someone in need. Sari's face went pale as she leaned closer to the screen. That's Azurian. It's one of ours. Eli's eyes widened. Are you sure? Sari nodded. It's distorted, but I can hear the pattern. It's not a mistake. It's a distress signal from one of the Azurian ships. A surge of hope filled Eli's chest. Then we need to go there. They could be in trouble. Sari's gaze hardened once again. They are. The pirates might be watching. We have to be careful. Eli's grip on the controls tightened. He could feel the weight of the decision ahead of him. If they went after this signal, it could lead them straight into danger. But it could also be the opportunity they had been waiting for. An Azurian ship, possibly with survivors. "Let's go," Eli said, his voice firm. "We're not leaving anyone behind." Sari nodded, her expression resolute. Together, they prepared to follow the signal. The path ahead was uncertain, but Eli and Sari were ready to face whatever came next. As the long step glided through the dark expanse of space, the HFY signal from the Azurian ship grew stronger. Sari sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands trembling slightly as she monitored the readings. She was trying to remain calm, but her anxiety was palpable. The closer they got to the source of the signal, the more her eyes darted around, watching for any sign of danger. Eli was at the controls, focused but aware of the tension in the air. He had heard about the diplomatic councils that Earth had with other species, but he had never attended one. Now, with Sari's people in dire need of help, it seemed like the right time to seek official aid. His hope was that once they reached the source of the distress signal, they could make contact with the surviving Azurian and bring them to safety. "We're almost there," Eli said, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Sari nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on the scanners. "I can feel them. It's too quiet. I don't know if it's the pirates watching or if it's something else. I fear they might be waiting." "We'll be cautious," Eli assured her, adjusting the ship's path. "We'll take it slow, get in close and see what's going on. We've got this." The moment of truth came when the long step entered the outer edge of the system where the signal had originated. A faint outline of a ship appeared on their radar, massive and silent, drifting at the edge of a nearby asteroid field. The ship was an Azurian vessel, though it appeared damaged. Pieces of its hull were missing, and parts of the structure were bent in unnatural ways, as if it had been under heavy fire. The stillness around it was unsettling. "This is it," Sari whispered, her voice filled with both hope and dread. "That's my people's ship, but it looks like they've been attacked." Eli's stomach sank. He had suspected the pirates might have attacked, but seeing the damage so up close made it real. There was no time to waste, and every decision now carried more weight than ever. "Stay sharp," Eli said. "I'm going to dock us near the wreckage. We'll check it out, see if there are any survivors." Sari nodded, her breath shaky as she gripped the armrest. Her expression was one of determination mixed with sorrow. "Please be careful. I don't know how many of us survived, but even one. We need to find them." Eli maneuvered the ship, slowly, his hands steady as he docked next to the abandoned Azurian vessel. The ship's quiet exterior only added to the growing unease in the pit of Eli's stomach. He turned to Sari, giving her a reassuring nod. "Ready?" he asked. Sari took a deep breath, then looked at him. "I am, Eli. Thank you for this, for everything." The two of them suited up, readying themselves for the delicate task ahead. As they stepped out into the dark, cold void of space, the wrecked Azurian ship loomed before them. Its broken hull and flickering lights were a haunting reminder of the violence that had taken place here. They docked safely, securing their position before heading into the heart of the ship. The interior was eerily quiet, but the signs of life were undeniable. There were abandoned control panels still blinking dimly, a few scattered personal belongings, and the faintest trace of movement in the distance. Sari's eyes scanned the area, her senses alert. "Stay close," Eli said softly, leading the way as they cautiously explored the ship. They passed through several empty rooms, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Sari moved with purpose, her gaze constantly shifting between the surroundings and the faint sounds of life that seemed to emanate from deeper within. She paused at every corner, listening intently for any noise, any indication that someone or something was still alive. Finally, they reached a large room that seemed to have been a main hub. Several Azurian bodies lay scattered on the floor, the signs of battle still clear. Some had been injured, others killed instantly. But in the far corner of the room, a small group of survivors huddled together, trying to stay out of sight. Their faces were haggard and drawn, but they were alive. Sari's heart leapt at the sight of her people. "They're here!" she exclaimed, her voice shaking with relief. She immediately rushed forward, calling out to them in their native tongue. The survivors looked up, recognition and disbelief flashing in their eyes. They rose shakily to their feet, hesitant at first, but then moved toward Sari. One of them, an older male, stepped forward. "Sari," he said, his voice full of emotion. "You live? We thought you were lost." Sari's eyes welled up with tears as she embraced the man, relief flooding through her. "I'm here. I made it. You're safe now." Eli watched quietly from the doorway, giving them a moment. But soon the reality of their situation sank in. The survivors were few, and their injuries were severe. They were weak, hungry, and scared. Despite the joy of finding them, the grimness of their condition was undeniable. Sari turned to Eli, her expression serious. "We need to get them to safety. The pirates may return at any moment." Eli nodded, understanding the urgency. "We'll get them out of here. We'll get them the help they need." Together, they led the survivors back to the long step. Journey was just beginning, but for the first time in what felt like forever, there was hope. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, they knew they wouldn't face it alone. With the survivors safely aboard the long step, Eli's primary concern now was getting them to a place of safety. The long step wasn't built for large groups, and the ship felt cramped with the extra passengers. Sari had been right. The pirates were out there, and they wouldn't stop searching for Azurian survivors. The long step's engines hummed steadily as Eli plotted their course through the stars, steering the ship toward a nearby human-controlled space station. It was a safe haven, a place where they could refuel, resupply, and perhaps even get the Azurian survivors the medical attention they desperately needed. But as they flew through the void, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. The silence in space was deafening, but every tiny signal, every flicker of movement made him uneasy. He wasn't sure if it was just his nerves or if the pirates were already closing in on them. Sari stood beside him at the navigation console, her face grim as she observed the data. "They're tracking us," she said quietly, her voice full of dread. "I can feel it. We don't have much time." Eli clenched his jaw, fighting the instinct to panic. "We'll make it to the station. We just have to stay ahead of them." But as the hours passed, the tension only grew. The survivors huddled in the medical bay, resting as best as they could, but their faces showed the strain of their ordeal. Sari had been their anchor, but even she seemed more distant now, lost in her thoughts. Eli knew she blamed herself for the attack on her people. She hadn't been able to protect them, and the weight of that failure seemed to press down on her shoulders with every passing minute. "We're almost there," Eli said, trying to reassure her, but even his own words felt hollow in the face of what lay ahead. The station finally appeared on their sensors, a sprawling structure filled with ships and cargo docks. Eli had made the decision to head for one of the private docking bays, a more secure location where the long step could be shielded from outside scans. The moment they docked, he breathed a sigh of relief. The pirates wouldn't be able to find them here, at least not right away, but there was no time to waste. Eli and Sari hurried to the docking bay's entrance, ready to meet with the station's personnel and get the Azurian survivors the help they needed. As they stepped off the long step, Eli felt a sense of urgency that he hadn't experienced before. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. He knew the pirates were out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike, and though they were safe for now, the danger hadn't passed. The station's security would keep them safe, but only for so long. "We'll need medical assistance," Eli told the station's commander, a tall woman with short cropped hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. "These people need help." The commander nodded, her eyes scanning the survivors as they were led into the station's medical facility. "We'll take care of them. Get them to the medbay immediately. But you're right to be worried. We've seen pirate ships in the area recently. They're hunting for survivors. We'll need to move quickly." Eli's stomach tightened. The pirates had been targeting peaceful races for years, and now they had set their sights on the Azurian people. Eli knew that it was only a matter of time before they realized the Longstep had docked at the station. But he couldn't abandon the survivors now. Not after everything they had been through. He turned to Sari, his voice low. "We need to keep a low profile. We'll stay here for as long as we can, but once the survivors are stabilized, we need to get them out of here. We can't risk staying in one place for too long." Sari looked at him, her expression weary but determined. "I understand. But we also need to figure out how to stop them, how to stop the pirates from attacking more innocent people. This isn't just about saving us anymore. It's about stopping them." Eli nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. Sari was right. The pirates couldn't be allowed to keep terrorizing peaceful races. They had to be stopped, and the only way to do that was to find their base of operations and destroy it. But that wasn't going to be easy. The pirates were skilled, ruthless, and scattered across the galaxy. Finding their hideout would take more than just a few daring moves. It would take a full-out strategy and a lot of luck. The next few days passed in a blur. The Azurian survivors received the medical care they needed, but their spirits remained low. They had seen too much, lost too much. Many of them had been with Sari's crew, and now they were all that remained. Sari was with them constantly, offering comfort, but Eli could see the strain on her face. She had taken on the weight of their survival, and it was starting to take its toll. She wasn't just a survivor anymore, she was a leader, and the responsibility was a heavy burden. One evening, as they sat together in the Longstep's common room, Eli broke the silence. "We can't stay here much longer. The pirates are still out there." Sari met his gaze, her eyes resolute. "Then let's find them. Let's finish what we started." Eli nodded. They had a long road ahead of them, and the danger was far from over. But with Sari by his side, he knew they had a chance. Together, they would confront the pirates and take back what was rightfully theirs. The days following their stay at the station were full of planning and quiet determination. Eli and Sari worked closely together to coordinate the next step in their mission, taking the fight to the pirates who had ravaged the Azurian people. The survivors, though weak, were recovering, and the sense of purpose among them began to return. With Sari's leadership, they were beginning to form a community once again. But Eli knew that their true mission wasn't over. It had only just begun. The Longstep had become more than just a ship now. It was a symbol of their shared resolve, their hope for a future where they wouldn't be hunted like prey. Together, with the survivors and the will to fight back, they would chart a course toward freedom, toward justice. Eli's ship was ready. He had worked tirelessly to prepare it for the upcoming battle. He knew the pirates wouldn't make it easy, but the Longstep had a few tricks up its sleeve: speed, stealth, and a crew that was more united than any enemy could have imagined. They were ready for whatever came next. The Longstep moved quietly, through space, heading toward a sector where the pirate fleet was rumored to be hiding. Eli and Sari sat side by side at the controls, their hands steady as they worked in perfect sync. It was a partnership forged through necessity, but it had grown into something stronger over time. They had become more than just allies. They were friends, family even. Eli had never expected to find such a connection in the midst of a galactic crisis, but with Sari, it felt like the beginning of something that could truly change the galaxy. "We're getting closer," Sari said, her voice calm but filled with resolve. She had been studying the data, analyzing the best approach to catch the pirates off guard. "Any sign of them?" Eli asked, keeping his eyes on the radar. "Not yet," Sari replied, "but I can feel it. They're here. We're getting close to their hideout. Eli nodded, his grip tightening on the controls. Let's move in quietly. We'll use the asteroid field for cover and slip in unnoticed. They were close now, the vast expanse of space growing darker as they approached the pirate stronghold. Eli's heart raced in his chest as he prepared for the unknown. They didn't know exactly what awaited them, but they had no choice but to face it head-on. There was no turning back now. Sari looked at Eli, her eyes filled with both determination and a hint of uncertainty. If we do this, Eli, there's no going back. We can't just defeat them. We have to destroy their base. For my people, for everyone they've hurt. Eli met her gaze, his expression resolute. I know, and I'm with you, all the way. Together, they made their way through the asteroid field, using the debris to stay hidden. The pirate base was nestled within a massive asteroid cluster, making it nearly invisible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. But Eli and Sari were prepared. They knew how to use the ship's stealth systems to blend in with their surroundings, making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. As they approached the heart of the pirate stronghold, the tension in the air was thick. Eli could feel it, an electric charge, the calm before the storm. The pirates were close and they wouldn't be expecting the attack. This was their chance to take them down once and for all. On my signal, Eli said quietly, his hand hovering over the controls. We'll go in fast. Get in, strike hard, and get out. No hesitation. Sari nodded, her fingers dancing over the ship's weapon controls. Ready when you are. Eli gave the signal, and the long step surged forward, racing through the asteroid field. The pirate base loomed ahead, its dark, jagged structure surrounded by ships, weapons, and fortified defenses. But they weren't prepared for the speed of the long step. With a series of sharp turns and evasive maneuvers, Eli and Sari slipped past the defenses, their ship weaving through the gaps with precision and skill. The pirate base was finally within range. Eli glanced at Sari, who was already focused, her eyes locked onto the target. She pressed a button, and the ship's weapon systems fired, striking the pirate base with powerful blasts. The explosion rocked the station, sending debris flying into space. The pirates scrambled, but it was too late. The long step had already made its mark. For a moment, the sound of explosions and chaos filled the air. Eli and Sari worked in sync, piloting the ship with precision as they disabled the pirate defenses, cutting through the enemy ships one by one. They moved quickly, taking out key targets, ensuring the pirates couldn't regroup. The pirates, caught off guard and overwhelmed, didn't stand a chance. After a few minutes, the station was in ruins. The pirate fleet was in disarray, their ships scattered, retreating into the void of space. Eli and Sari took a moment to catch their breath, the adrenaline still surging through their veins. But the job wasn't done. There were still survivors to rescue and pirates to capture, but the victory was a turning point. They had struck a blow to the pirates' operations, and it was a message that would echo across the galaxy. As they made their way back to the long step, Eli glanced over at Sari. She was sitting quietly at the console, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. She had done it. She had helped bring justice to her people. Eli smiled at her. We did it, Sari. We really did it. Sari looked back at him, a tired but genuine smile on her face. We did, and we'll keep doing it, as long as we have the strength. Together, they had overcome impossible odds. They had faced the darkness of space, and in doing so, they had found a new purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, but they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer alone in the universe, and together they could face whatever came next.